Welcome back to another edition of the Video Marketing Podcast. And today I'm really excited about the guest that we have to talk with us, and you'll see why in a few moments. She is one of my most favorite people. Her name is Paula Schmidt from Strategic Dynamics, and she in fact is the strategic business coach for Mastermind Studios. She's part of our Mastermind group. She is a business coach extraordinaire when it comes to strategic planning and strategic marketing, strategic decisions in general within business and nonprofits. And she's going to talk to us today about video and strategy, or being strategic. Thanks for joining me, Paula.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's talk about strategy when it comes to video. And I think where I'd like to start is maybe just briefly, some of the things that are not strategy.
Okay.
So let's say, a lot of people, when they come to us to have video done, right, I tell them, let's be strategic, or I tell them to be strategic, strategically what they want to accomplish, what is their strategy behind doing their video. And I hear things often like, I want to get more millennials buying my product or my service. Is that strategy?
Well, I think it would be a piece of strategy.
Okay.
But if we're actually talking about being strategic with video or strategic with marketing, we're talking about a lot more than that. And what you're describing is when we stop there. When we stop there, we don't get the full benefit of strategy. Right. We just get a little piece of it. And it's sort of like having a little piece of a pie. Mm-hmm. You want the whole thing. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
Right. So I want to do some social media video. Is that strategy?
Again, it's a piece. It's a purpose. It might be a reason that you want a strategy or a reason that you want a video. Whereas the last example you gave was a goal for the video itself. It's not the whole strategy, though. Right. Strategy is a much larger piece than either of those two.
Okay, so let's figure out then exactly what is strategy. So to set the picture for everybody about what we're going to talk about. What is strategy?
So when I look at strategy, I'm looking at essentially a three-part process. One is, where are we right now? And it's really important to know where we are right now. And then, where do we want to get to? Mm-hmm. And then, what are we going to do in order to get there? And so sometimes people will choose one of those. They'll say, well, I want to sell more of this widget. Well, that's the where I want to get to. Or they'll say, I just hate where I am. I can't believe it. I don't even know what to do. Well, that's the where I am. Or they'll say, so we're going to do a video, and we're going to do social media, and we're going to do, and so they're already talking about the pieces in the middle, but they aren't talking, it doesn't go anywhere. So unless you have all three, right, it doesn't work.
Let's use an example. I was actually meeting this morning with one of my favorite nonprofit clients, Habitat for Humanity. And we were talking this morning about what we're doing here, the video podcast stuff. And they were talking about, they're putting together right now, because they're in the middle of planning out and doing a build for 2017. They've already broken ground, mm-hmm, and they're building a new home. And obviously all the work that they do a restore helps to raise the money for building of this home. And they have lots of organizations and sponsors that get involved to help build a home every year. And they were talking about the sponsors needing something for the sponsor, the platinum sponsors, that was a little bit better, a little bit extra than what a gold sponsor would get, or something like that. And I introduced the concept of the video podcasts. Mm-hmm. If they did a sort of a weekly series for a few weeks of a video podcast where they were interviewing their platinum sponsors. The strategy behind that, in my mind, or my thinking, is to leverage the sphere of influence of your sponsors, but give them something of value at the same time. So by creating this interview between them and their sponsor, they would have their sponsor saying why they're involved and why this is important to the community and that type of thing. But it gives a message that the sponsor would want to share to their audience in social media. Mm-hmm. And strategically, it then gives the Habitat for Humanity staff the ability to leverage the viewing audience of that sponsor as well as their own sphere of influence on social media. Strategy?
Sort of.
Okay.
Because what you left out is what are they actually trying to accomplish? You gave me the medium term accomplishment piece of leveraging, of getting more buy-in from their sponsors. Those are the medium term. But what you didn't tell me is what are they actually trying to accomplish with that?
What are they talking about?
Why? Why would you do all of that?
Yeah.
What is the point of all of that? And so, and you also didn't tell me where they're starting from. And so I think I can sort of extrapolate from what you said. So where they want to go to is to have more buy-in from their sponsors in order to have sponsors more regularly, have a higher quality of sponsors, have a higher price tag on those sponsors, have more sponsors in the community so that at the end of the day, they can build more homes. Mm-hmm. So the goal is how can we have a more engaged sponsorship in order to build more homes? Mm-hmm. Okay, there's all kinds of ways that you can do that. The one that they chose was to recognize their platinum sponsors. Mm-hmm. So that's one piece. There might be 4 different strategic objectives or 4 different streams that they're going down to get to that same, we want a high quality sponsorship and we want to build more homes. But they have to start with then, right now we can afford to build 1 and we have, 4 platinum sponsors.
Right.
We want 12 engaged repeat platinum sponsors so that we can build 3 homes. Mm-hmm. Well, now how do we get there? Right? But if you don't articulate that goal, one of the things that happens is people want to get onto the tactics. They want to get onto let's just do something. Let's act. We could do this and we could do this and we could do this and we could do this. And you can spend a lot of time, money, and energy doing this and this and this and this, and it won't get you any closer to that goal.
Right. So without planning out an effective strategy, it ends up costing more and being less effective.
It ends up costing more in some way. Sometimes it's money. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's time and energy. And honestly, for me, time and energy are more precious. Mm. I can always find more money. I can't always find more time and energy. And if it isn't done in a way that is life-giving for me and is draining for me, I'm not going to want to do it again. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not getting the results I want, it's going to be hard to convince me to spend my energy and time on it again.
Awesome. So we're talking about video. I don't know if we can boil it down at this point or not, but can you walk me through sort of a step-by-step process for being strategic with video?
With video? Okay. So there's a couple of components that we want to make sure that we know this is where are we going to. Mm-hmm. We want to know what's the video supposed to do. Is the video supposed to attract more buyers? Is it supposed to build authority? By authority, we mean you are the best widget maker. People should buy from you because you know the most about it, or you are the best, or you have the authority. Is it meant to attract previous clients and remind them about you? Is it meant to increase your brand recognition so that when people are walking down the street in front of your bricks and mortar store, they go, oh yeah, I saw that video about that store. Let's go check it out. What's the purpose? What are you trying to actually do with it? So that's one piece.
Can I stop you there?
You bet.
How many of those things can you have in a video?
Man, if you have more than 2 or 3, you're in trouble.
Okay. I think that's an important point.
I think that's really important. And I think that people try to do too much with it. And why video or marketing we think that we can do so many things with? We have a primary purpose for a chair. Mm-hmm. We have a primary purpose for a shirt. There's probably a primary purpose for a video. Now, it may do other things. Mm-hmm. A shirt can keep you warm. It can keep you covered. It can be a fashion statement. But the primary purpose of it is to cover your body. Mm-hmm. So the primary purpose of a video is pretty important.
Okay. So stick to 1 or 2 or maximum 3 specific goals that you want to accomplish with that video.
Yeah.
What's next?
So then you need to know who you're talking to. Who are you trying to actually get to do that thing? Because it is a very different video if I am talking to a 25-year-old millennial than if I am talking to a 65-year-old retiree.
Right.
Completely different video. And it's going to land differently. The pace is going to have to be different. The music's probably going to have to be different. Who I have on film is going to have to be different. The length of the video is going to be different depending on
language, everything.
The language, everything, depending on who the audience is. So, what am I trying to accomplish?
Yep.
Who is the audience? And then what will accomplish that in this audience? Because once again, remember, if it's a 25-year-old audience and I am trying to establish authority, I'm going to use different stuff than if I'm trying to simply have brand recognition. What we use in a video is going to look different.
Right.
Okay. So once we've got who are we talking to,
Yep.
what are we trying to accomplish, then I think the strategy is more about what's going to do that. So now we've got those implementation steps that are in between.
Right.
So,
What is there anything more that we consider or talk about or think about when we're talking about developing the strategy to accomplish the goal with that particular audience? Maybe it'd be easier to phrase it this way. If we look at an example that you and I have worked on together, and I love working with clients where we share the same client because we can get to something that is really powerful. And one of my favorite examples of that, I know we've worked on several together, but one of my favorite examples is Jeremy Reed. So back at the beginning of, well, not at the beginning of him doing video with us, but we finally got him to the point where he was willing to sit down and really take a look at what he was doing strategically. And it was a mind-blowing experience, I think, for him and for us, because we were able to really make things into a game changer for his business. So let's talk about that process and use that as an example.
okay.
I know Jeremy is okay with that.
Okay.
So when we sat down and we talked to him about his goal, I know that, his goal originally when we sat down, before we started getting strategic, was I want to sell more houses.
Right.
But what did that mean?
Yeah.
You want to find more buyers or you want to find more sellers, right? And I know that in the process we discovered that obviously when you have the listing, whether you find the buyer for it or not, at least you're engaged in part of the sale. And so he really wanted more listings, but more than that, why did he want to have more listings, have more customers? He eventually wanted to develop a training program for realtors. And so we started to get a much bigger picture of where he wanted to go and start to develop some strategies on how to get there.
And I think we even back that up one step further. That was almost a secondary step for him to say he wanted to sell more houses, because we started out with the conversation of, do you want to sell more houses, or do you want to sell higher priced houses, or do you want to sell more houses in this area, or what is it actually that you want to do? And so we started with that whole conversation, and then all of a sudden he sort of as an aside went, well, because I'd really like to do this training program. And we went, okay, so it's not actually about selling houses. That's just a piece of it. The bigger piece is you want selling houses and to be successful at that so that you can then be able to teach other people to do that. And so that's the mechanism. And I think there's a couple of things within doing video. Remember that in that whole spectrum of where am I starting, where do I want to get to, and how am I going to get there, video is probably a piece of how you want to get there. And so there may be there's almost a micro strategy. There's the strategy for video and the strategy for whether you have cups printed or how you talk to your clients or what kind of paper you use. But those are all toward what are you actually trying to impact. And that was an important thing with Jeremy, to realize that it wasn't just that he wanted to sell houses. He wanted to sell houses in order to have this larger goal.
Right. I remember specifically when we were doing the strategic planning sessions, talking to Jeremy, and one of the things that we discovered in that process was that when he makes a listing presentation, when he sits down in front of somebody that was going to sell their home, that his closing ratio was unbelievably good. 9 out of 10 presentations that he made resulted in them deciding to go with him, because when they could understand what he was going to bring to the table and what he was going to do for them, they really understood the value. But one of the biggest challenges that he had was there's only so much of his time to go around to sit down and do those listing presentations. So how do we scale the listing presentations so that people could see all of the value that he brings without him having to sit in front of every single one and go through the entire process?
So he had a couple of goals for those videos, and that's a really great example. One of his goals was authority. One of his goals was, why would I even sit down and talk to Jeremy? We had to develop for him the authority that said, this is somebody I should put on my list of realtors that I should interview. Mm-hmm. And so that was one piece. The other one was strict giving information. There had to be enough information in those videos so that people knew the kinds of questions that they might ask, or the things they might discuss with Jeremy. So that was those videos. There were 2 goals for: mm-hmm. establish authority and give information.
Right. Now, obviously, we've done many different types of videos with Jeremy, from business profiles to commercials to the 6 Weeks or Sold Less series mm-hmm. that we developed with him, and other videos as well. Maybe I know that you said that video could be one strategy, or mm-hmm. video is a piece of one strategy, but there are all sorts of different types of videos. Interview Absolutely. Videos, podcasts like what we're doing here, mm-hmm. Commercials, sharing of information or education. There's lots of different types of videos. Maybe let's talk about some of those and the strategies behind some of them.
Okay. So one of the things that often comes up is, well, I'm just going to make a video. Oh, why are you going to make a video? Well, I need a commercial.
Yep.
So a commercial is one type. But remember, what are you trying to accomplish? And who's your audience? If your audience is 25-year-old millennials, they're not watching commercials because they don't watch television. And if they do, they zip through something. They're searching for stuff on YouTube and looking at stuff online.
Which can be a form of a commercial.
Absolutely, but it has to have a whole different form. There has to be an entertainment value.
Right.
They aren't looking to be sold. They're looking to be entertained or informed, or have their buddy look at something that makes them laugh. Like it's
right.
So
it's usually a different approach. There's a different formula than just a general awareness commercial.
There is. And so a commercial is one, and a commercial can be in a variety of different places. But then there's this idea. Some of the marketing that we used to talked about advertising, talked about convincing people to buy, and we were constantly pitching. Everything that we did was a pitch video or a pitch blog post, or I wasn't even blog post at that point, a pitch in a newspaper. It was always pitching people. And one of the things that's happening right now is that we're recognizing the power of what we call content marketing.
Right.
And so content marketing is a lot of what we're doing right now. We're giving people something that has value for them. And so we're creating a video or a blog posting or a little social media meme or something that gives them value so that we create a relationship with them.
Right.
And so that's another type of video, that relationship building. How do you start to know Peter at Mastermind Studios? How do we know that Peter, when I'm thinking about video, is somebody that I should really go talk to? Mm-hmm. Well, I know that because I've seen your podcasts and I've seen other videos that you've done, and I might see you on LinkedIn or I might see you on Facebook. And so there's this whole big raft of things that we do to build that relationship, not pitching. We're never pitching within those videos. We're simply educating, giving away, including people in our conversation, and building that relationship.
Right. Giving them information that has serious value for the time that they're investing to watch it.
Yeah.
Or to listen to it or to read it. And therefore, we're establishing ourselves as experts, or our customers are establishing themselves as experts in that field, so that you can go and follow up with the potential sale afterwards.
So we're establishing authority.
Yep.
And then what we know is that people buy from people they know, trust, and like.
Right.
And so the whole point of that kind of video is to show up and be a person that somebody could know, trust, and like. So
awesome. So we've got knowledge-based economy type information marketing videos. We've got commercials. I know that we've worked with you, and we've done some video work with you, and you've done some video work of your own. What other areas are you working on, or have you experienced with video where businesses or organizations may want to consider looking at?
Well, I think that we see a lot more about simply talking about who we are. And a lot of nonprofits or foundations or government organizations really need to use video when they are simply trying to build awareness. It's not about marketing. It's not about selling. It's simply about saying, hey, do you know who we are? And might you be interested in either using our services or the donors that you were talking about with Habitat for Humanity? Would you want to be involved? Is this an organization you might want to volunteer for? Reality is that we have all kinds of organizations in every community, and sometimes it's astonishing. Sometimes when you actually look at what I have had conversations, and I work in the nonprofit world, and I still regularly will have somebody say, well, do you know this organization? And I think, no, you know what, I don't. And so there's an awareness piece, I think, that's really critical. And I have watched nonprofits and government really shy away from that. So hospitals, when I say government, I mean hospitals or health authorities or any of those things. They shy away from it because they don't want to be seen as markety or promoty or any of those things. And my comment to them is, you are sharing with people something that you're doing that is important. And you're giving people an opportunity to be involved. You're not trying to impress them or to make them do something or motivate them any way other than to say, hey, that's a really cool thing that's in my community. And I've got a few hours. Yeah, I could volunteer for a little bit. Or, man, my cousin's really sick, and I didn't know that there was that organization in our town. I should really tell my cousin about that.
Right.
So you're giving people an opportunity.
I think also a lot of organizations in Kamloops have some important messages, some important information to share. And less and less do we have time to read the volumes of information that are out there. And, I know with a lot of the work that I do, volunteer-wise in various boards for various nonprofits, there is such a volume of information that we have to read and become familiar with and be aware with, to ask the right questions and to know what we're doing from a board management perspective. There's volumes and volumes of information. And I know quite often it's easier for me to get through that information if there's a video or if there's something that I can watch where I not only read what they're saying, in words, I get a sense or a feeling of what that organization is really like by the way that their executive director is phrasing things, when they're being interviewed or something like that. It gives me a better sense of what's going on there. Again, speaking to that whole trust issue, right? Do I trust what's going on here? Do I understand what they're really seeing? And it's easier for me to get through when it's video versus wading through a pile of written documentation and written information.
I think you brought up 2 points. One of them is that when we're trying to educate somebody about something that our organization does, or even that our business does, I mean, really, truly, how to use a certain product.
Right.
When we're trying to educate somebody, video is fantastic. And we know that. We use YouTube now. We don't pick up a book anymore to learn how to play the guitar. We YouTube it. And we say, I want to be able to play this song. How do I play this song? People are almost always turning first to a video over something written. Right. Certainly when I get an information piece or a request for donation or something in the mail, I may or may not read that, and it may sit on my desk for a really long time before I read it. But if something comes across my Facebook feed from a friend that I know, like, and trust, who has reshared a video from the same organization, I'm much more likely to watch that video. So now what video does is it gives us the opportunity, because of all the social media, it gives us the opportunity to leverage other people's relationships.
Right.
So now I would watch that video because I know, like, and trust the person who shared it.
Right.
Not because I necessarily know, like, and trust the organization.
Right.
Although I may come to do that, but because I know, like, and trust the person who shared it.
The sharing in and of itself is almost like a testimonial. It's third-party credibility that information has value.
Or that something in it is interesting.
Right.
There's a reason that I shared it.
Right.
Yeah. So that was my first thought. The second thought is, I am finding video more and more being used, and very much like Jeremy was talking about in terms of the course. We're actually working with Strategic Dynamics. We're working on a whole new product suite specifically around teaching board development.
Right.
We're using video because what we know is that the marketplace on most topics is overwhelming online in terms of what's written. You can download 2,700 textbooks on just about anything. Mm-hmm. And yet people are recognizing that there isn't enough time and energy. And so we have to be sure that if we're trying to educate somebody, once again, what are we trying to accomplish? We're trying to accomplish educating somebody. Our target audience is this. What's the best way to educate them? If we want it fast, we want it entertaining, we want it engaging, we want them to buy in, video is a really, really good tool.
Right. And so in your case, I think it's safe to say that in some of the video that you're doing, the video itself is actually the product. You know, you've got video that's communicating your message where you're putting information out there for free, mm-hmm. Establishing authority, educating, providing value. But you're also doing videos that are videos that people have to purchase to get access to, mm-hmm. which is the training itself. So you're actually turning a communications tool into an information product.
Exactly.
That's creating value for you as well and revenue.
Exactly. So it creates that revenue. It's a product. For those people who are facilitators or teachers or trainers, it's also a way to scale. Mm-hmm. I've been doing board development for over 20 years, but there are only so many boards I can get in front of.
Right.
I only have so much time and energy. Those are finite.
Yep.
But if I actually want to scale, if I want more boards to be able to actually learn this and to have the benefit of having that kind of board development and that kind of training, they can watch it anytime.
Yep.
They can watch it on their schedule. They can watch it in their house. They can watch it on their phone. They can watch it on their computer. They can watch it on their iPad. Somehow, if you're doing the teaching and training work, it gives you the ability to scale it.
Right.
And that's a benefit for me, but it's also a benefit for the client,
right.
because more clients have access to it. And not just in Kamloops or British Columbia, but across North America. I mean,
right.
that's the beauty of video as well, is that it doesn't sit in this body. It mm-hmm. sits in this multitude. It can be everywhere.
Well, and speaking to your strategy, back at the beginning, mm-hmm. you said you want to do things that are fun and that you enjoy and that don't drain you. So I know, speaking to Janice and from my own experience and from things that you've said to me in the past, being in front of a group of people and doing a presentation can be emotionally draining. If you're on your A game and you're bringing your full game, it can take a lot out of you to stand up in front of someone and make a really effective presentation. And so the more that you do that, the more energy that's sucked out of you. And you got to make sure you're having a good hair day every single time,
yeah.
right? Whereas doing video, a good strategy, you can scale that without it sucking the life out of you and still make those presentations, and you're having a good hair day every presentation without you even having to do it anymore.
And I think it's not an either or. It's a both and.
Right.
Right? I will continue to do front of the room stuff because I love doing it. Yes, it takes a ton of energy for me, which is why I say it's finite. My time and my energy is finite. But it also is pretty juicy. I do love doing it. And so I will continue to do that. And is there another way that I can add something? That I can do this, and for the target audience that this isn't right for, what else might be right? And certainly I looked at email campaigns that were written campaigns. And what I've recognized is that will hit a certain target audience, and that's really appropriate for that strategic audience. But there's an audience that wants the quick, fun, juicy training videos that they can watch from anywhere. So yeah, it's fun to see. Once again, there's a number of streams that I'm using to get to that strategic end. Right. Video is one of them, definitely.
Awesome. So I know that you do with boards, nonprofit boards, with boards of various different businesses and for-profit organizations, governments, and with even a lot of clients, some of which are mutual clients of ours. You do a lot of strategic planning with them from a business perspective. You've done strategic planning with Mastermind Studios. So let's talk about a strategic plan for a second.
Okay.
I know that we're kind of moving out of video a little bit because that's, again, one tactic or one area where you can do strategic planning, but an overall strategic plan for business. What is it? What's the difference between a strategic plan and a business plan and a marketing plan? You know, are they the same thing, or is there a difference?
So a strategic plan is that overarching where do we want to go and how are we going to get there? Right. That's what the strategic plan is about. A business plan is usually about who am I and what do I want to do? So there's a little bit more, there's more of a conversation about who the team is and what the financials are like and the projections. And it's often a business plan is much more of what you would give to a potential funder or a potential partner. It's more about what is the business.
Right.
Now, it may also have a strategic plan sort of attached to it, you know, hanging onto the side of it,
or a
component of it. Because anytime you're looking to have a partner or money or any of those things, they want to know what you're going to actually accomplish. And so a strategic plan might be a piece of it, but it's a pretty distinctly different document and plan. A marketing plan is probably a subset of the strategic plan.
Okay.
Because in any strategic plan, if you're talking about how do I want to get here, one of the streams might be what does my marketing look like in order to get there.
Right.
Another one might be what does my HR look like, my human resources look like in order to get there, or what kinds of operations do I have to do in order to get there. So there may be a number of different streams within the strategic plan. One of them might be marketing.
Right. So you're really within your strategic plan, it's covering off operational issues like HR, marketing, communications, training. All of that is coming from a place of strategy.
Yeah.
Right? Why are we doing what we're doing? Where are we coming from? Where are we heading? How are we getting there? It's that whole path of how we're getting there and why we're doing those different things.
And I think the thing, so when I talk about always being strategic, it always comes from the place of when I say, are you being strategic? My question is, are you keeping that big end goal in mind? Because we very, very often look at something here and go, oh, that looks like a really good idea. But our goal's over here. And so why chase after shiny things?
Right.
If it's not going to, I mean, you've heard me say that to you multiple times when
chaser.
we're talking.
I love chasing after those shiny things.
And those sort of easily distracted by shiny things can be a really creative place. Don't hear me saying that we don't ever want to blue sky or brainstorm or investigate some of those opportunities. I think that's really valuable. And at the same time, at some point, our analysis of whether we keep chasing that squirrel or keep looking at that shiny thing has to be, does it actually fit with where I said I wanted to go? And that's strategy.
Right.
That question right there is being strategic.
It's funny. There is a converse to all of that. it's funny. Sometimes we come across the businesses that where the business owner is very focused, has been sticking at something for years, and they're still miserable. And it's amazing. I mean, I like the Michael Gerber approach sometimes to business, right? Where he talks about a lot of people suffer from entrepreneurial seizures. They just get into business because they want to have more time, make more money, and have a lot more fun. But it turns out quite often for many of them that it's the opposite. They end up having less time for anything, less money than they would have ever made working for someone else.
And they're miserable.
And they are miserable because there's so much more to this business thing and running a business than just what they thought it would be, right? You know, controlling their whole destiny, the whole thing ends up controlling them. But it's amazing since, you know, in the last decade, how many business owners I've met that have been very focused, that have stuck to one specific thing and you know, followed up and followed through with the whole thing, but they're absolutely miserable because they haven't really envisioned the right goal, you know, especially for those business owners where the business is named after them. They weren't very strategic there, right? You know, we call it, you know, Frank's appliance store, right? Well, then everybody wants to deal with Frank, and his strategy, you know, or the reason he got into business was, I want to spend more time on the golf course. But if it's Frank's appliance store, everybody wants to deal with Frank. He can't spend more time on the golf store. He's got to be there.
Unless he has video.
Unless he has video.
See, this is the beauty about it, right? And so I can still, if I'm Frank, I can still establish authority. I can still talk about the business. I can still say, come down and talk to one of my team because I'm going to be at the golf course, right? There still is this ability to build authority, to engage people, to have people know, like, and trust me and the brand I stand for.
Yep.
Over and over again. I don't have to be in front of them anymore, right? There's,
And still have that personal, authentic approach.
So when I work with strategy, and most of my clients have heard me say this, I don't believe there's a right way or a wrong way to do strategy. I think there's a way that's working for you and a way that's not working for you. And so the example you just gave, for the right Frank, that might be, naming his business Frank's Auto might be fine. For another Frank, it's not.
So long as it's not an appliance store.
Yes, sorry. I knew it was an A.
Yes. That's good, though.
So one of the things that we know about strategy, I named my company very intentionally. So the name of the company is Strategic Dynamics, because I don't believe that strategy has to be like this. Like that once you, it's not a set it and forget it. It's not, I said this was my goal and therefore I'm just going to keep grinding at it no matter how miserable it gets, no matter how wrong it is, no matter how much the environment changes, I'm just going to keep grinding at it. I would say that that's actually not being strategic. That's being stubborn and actually being the anti-strategic. I don't think that is strategic at all. We used to do strategic planning with organizations and with businesses for 3 to 5 years, and we don't do that anymore. Because you can't plan in detail for a future you can't predict in detail. And in this environment, we cannot predict past 1 to 3 years. And so we're not doing 5-year strategic plans anymore. 15 years ago, we did 10-year strategic plans and we would forecast out. It's just not possible anymore.
Right.
And so there has to be this ability to recognize that we are in dynamic business environments and we still have to be strategic. So how do you do that? And that really comes down to this idea of not only what is my goal, but why is my goal. And so if the why changes, then the goal has to change.
That makes or goals.
Or goals have to change.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's funny, you talked about your name.
Yep.
And how you were very strategic with your name. And I thought when we named Mastermind Studios, we also were being very strategic. And I think this is where the help of a strategic coach like yourself can really come in. Because when we set up Mastermind Studios, you and I knew each other, but we hadn't started working together yet. I met you through my wife. liked you, but didn't have it. Didn't have a lot of overlapping experience at that point. And so we came up with the name Mastermind Studios because in our minds, mastermind meant several people working together to come up with something much more powerful. But that was our reality based on our experiences of what mastermind meant. And we weren't thinking about the cartoon characters, you know, and old Pinky in the Brain taking over the world and other connotations of what comes to other people's minds when they think mastermind. And then on top of that, when we think studios, we think film studios. But it's amazing the number of people that have walked by the operation when on Laval when I've been standing outside, and I hear one person say to the other person, "Oh, Mastermind Studios. I wonder what's up there. Is it like a dance studio?
Oh, interesting.
Or is it a recording studio, like a music studio, or what do they do up there?" And you know, so we have to marry branding to it that establishes, you know, video cameras and things like that, so they get a better idea of what, you know, and so they get either hinged not only just on studios, but they get unhinged on Mastermind, right? So not necessarily, although the best intentions, not necessarily the most strategically well thought out name for a company, right? So we need to spend a lot more effort and time in educating what that means and building the brand than some businesses would have to.
Yes.
Like Gord's Maytag. I think we really know what he does. And, you know, that does...
You're hooked on appliances today.
I don't know what it is. I guess maybe it's time to replace some appliances. But...
So, yes, around the Mastermind Studios conversation. And also, let's talk about... So you've just described to me where you are.
Right.
So if
or where we've been.
Or
Yep.
where you are right now. Where you are right now is the word mastermind is sometimes confusing to people. The word studios is sometimes confusing to people. And so remember we talk about where we are, where we want to get to, and how we're going to get there, right? I think that we often spend a lot of time lamenting and regretting and second-guessing where we are. Where we are is where we are. We can't change that.
Yep.
And so anytime I'm dealing with a group, dealing with a business on strategy, we can spend a little bit of time talking about where we are and what the pros and cons are, what's working, what's not working, and get a really good sense of where we are. Because honestly, if we're flying to Vancouver, it helps to know that we're starting in Kamloops and not Fort St. John. Completely different flight path if we're starting from a different place. We need to know where we're starting from. But we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on that because you just told me where you'd want to be. You would want to be someplace where people recognize mastermind, people recognize studio, and that there's something else to that. Honestly, mastermind, what a great opportunity to use the idea of the mastermind, which is the sort of cartoonish one, and talk about something that's really important to you. Because actually masterminding, the example that you used, the reason you named it that is really important to you. So when we're talking about strategy, we're talking about moving from the villain mastermind to the collaborative, life-giving mastermind, which is actually what you are all about and what Mastermind Studios is all about. So what a great opportunity for education that actually gets you there in a way that people would never, if you hadn't named your company that, you'd never get to talk about masterminding. You'd never get to talk about that other goal, which for you is so much bigger than just creating a video.
Right.
I mean, one of the things about working with Mastermind Studios is that it's not just a video company. It's a company that cares about what happens with the video. It's a company that cares about how the collaborative approach is when you're making a video. I have heard a lot of your clients say, that was nothing like I thought it was going to be. Because it's life-giving, because it's energizing, because you aren't just making videos. You are creating stories. You are helping people tell their stories. You're helping people make an impact. Really, that's what masterminding is all about. And had you not named your company that, you wouldn't have had a chance to do to talk about all those things on purpose. right? Well, this is why we're called Mastermind. Let me tell you about what we believe masterminding is. Whole different conversation that you'd never get to have otherwise. So, yeah, we can talk about where strategy broke, but let's also not spend too much time there. Let's talk about what we can do now, right?
Well, framing that same scenario or the same issue, Mastermind Studio is the name of the company. I think there's another piece to it that we talked about earlier as well, and that's who's your audience. Yeah. So we've got people walking out in front of Mastermind Studios, not knowing what Mastermind Studios does, but does it matter if they know what Mastermind Studios does? The answer is yes, I think. Obviously, if they're a potential client or if they're our target market. But if they're not, why do we need to waste our energies, our time, our money, educating them, going after them to make sure they understand what Mastermind Studios is, if it's not something that is going to benefit them or us?
If you told me that one of your goals was to increase your walk-in clientele, then I would say you have to do something about that.
Right.
But I'm not sure that's one of your goals.
No.
So that maybe is the other thing about strategy. I remember working with a trainer years and years ago, and we were talking about commitment. We were talking about choosing a path and actually walking toward a specific goal. And I was in my early 20s, and I said to him, "What's the drawback of commitment? Like I can't see a drawback of commitment," because of course we'd been all, you can do this with commitment, and it's so important to have a commitment, and we framed it positively. And he stopped and he said, "The drawback of commitment is that you have to say no to other things. You have to choose something, and you have to say no to the other things." And I think that sometimes when we are doing video, or when we're doing strategy, or when we're driving toward a certain goal, we have a sadness about the things that might have been fun, or those shiny objects that we want to pursue. And so my recommendation is that you strategically allow for some shiny object chasing. Just don't make it your whole strategy.
Right.
Right? So I'm going to pursue this, but when I see a shiny object, I'm going to pursue it for a little while, and I'm going to have a way that I'm going to pursue shiny objects. I'm not going to say I can't, because I know for you and I know for me that would make us miserable. If we couldn't...
Chasing after shiny objects sometimes is life-giving as well.
It is sometimes life-giving, and it sometimes results in our best ideas. Like we have fabulous ideas because we let ourselves sort of think outside of the box. And if we're always thinking within the strategic box, I think that that's one of the reasons that people get really afraid of strategy. They really believe that committing to a strategy means losing things or giving up things or having to work hard, and really when we talk about strategy, we're talking about streamlining things, making things easier. And so if ever strategy starts to feel constricting, change your strategy. Strategy isn't forever and ever. Right. But one of the things about strategy that I think we sort of got off track in terms of what is in a strategic plan. But one of the things that's in any kind of strategy that is successful is measures. We have to be able to measure it.
Yes.
We do. And so, I can say if your strategy isn't working, then change it. You have to know if your strategy is working or not.
Right.
And you have to be able to say, we're going to try this strategy. We can realistically expect that we're going to hit this goal in 6 months. And so in 6 months, we're going to measure that. We're going to actually assess it and say, did we reach it? And
so
if we didn't...
the more specific your goal is, the more measurable it is.
Often. So in 6 months, we measure it and we say, well, we didn't get there. So now we have a choice. Are we going to give it another 6 months, or are we going to say that wasn't successful? And either of those is okay. But there is that place where we said, we're going to actually measure whether it's working or not. And the challenge comes with not everything that can be measured should be, and not everything that should be measured can be, right? And so sometimes we have these things that we have to do a little bit of a gut check or a little bit of a sort of thermometer. But if you have too many of those, you're actually in chaos. There's a if you can't measure something, even if it's measured by I will feel positive about this, or I will be able to give you 10 things or 10 people that would give this, would tell you that this has impacted their life, or whatever that looks like. You choose. I mean, you choose your measures. It's not there are, once again, there aren't any right or wrong. There's just working or not working.
Right.
So yeah, measures are pretty critical in any kind of strategic plan, and timelines. Right. The other thing that I see often when people talk about being strategic is they're like, well, we're going to do that. And when I say when, they say, we're going to do that. And there isn't this willingness to commit. And I think that scares us. It scares us because what if we can't? Well, if you can't, then you get there and now you say, where are we now? I mean, there's nothing in strategy that says you're stuck with it, or you are right or wrong, or a good person or a bad person because you met your goal or met your measure.
Yep.
It's, if you don't have a goal, man, the chances of getting there are pretty slim.
So now I got to bring Jeremy back
to
talk about this. And I promise we will do that. We'll bring Jeremy back to talk about the results that he's gotten with his video campaigns that we've done with him. But I just got to speak to it for a second. So you're talking about measures. So when we sat down with Jeremy, we went through this whole exercise. He's going to sell 10 homes in 10 different areas of the city that have 10 completely different scenarios. You know, one's an empty nester, the other one's they've got to sell because something's happened from a tragedy standpoint or whatever. Another one is, an investment property. 10 different scenarios, 10 different parts of town, 10 different homes, 10 different sellers, all sold in 6 weeks or less. Highly, highly measurable.
For a certain percentage of the asking price.
Oh, and yeah, that was the other thing. He had to have it very close to the asking price or more.
Yeah.
So we set very specific goals that were very measurable.
Yeah.
And he accomplished that 9 out of 10.
But I remember him saying that this is the beautiful thing about setting those goals and those measurable goals.
Yeah.
I remember when we set those goals and when we drew the line in the sand, he went from, so I kind of decided to, great, now how do we do that? Like there was something motivating in that setting that, and the sparkle came, and had we not challenged him and said, when are you going to do that? By when? What's it going to look like? Be really explicit about that. I think he would have still been at the place of, so this is kind of what I'm thinking.
Yep.
Right? It's when you do that, there is huge energy in that. And there is huge motivation. For some people, it's fear.
Yep.
And
now you're accountable and it's measurable. I've got to do it.
Yeah. And for some people, that's highly motivating. And you have to choose what your measures look like. We have a joke in our house. So my husband has been in the past motivated by what I call it, the sky is falling. So if we don't get it done, the world is going to end, the sky is falling, we better get going. And I'm really not motivated by that. In fact, I'm demotivated by that. So I laugh at times. I used to say he would run around the house going, the sky is falling, what are you doing? And I would say, I'm hiding under the table because the sky is falling. So be careful what measures you choose. Choose measures that work for you.
And I think it's important to say, don't be scared to fail as well. A lot of people say, okay, well, if I set my goal that far and I don't hit it, it's going to be terrible. But again, going back to Jeremy, it was magical that he failed once out of those 10. Because here's what happened. Video number 9. It wasn't even video number 10. Video number 10 finished off with one of the ones that was successful. Video number 9 was about a property that went over the 6 weeks and then was pulled off the market and it didn't sell. And so what we encouraged Jeremy to do was to go ahead, be completely transparent, be completely honest, and tell everybody that he's not perfect. And that was a big thing for Jeremy, right?
Yeah.
He was scared, but at the end, he said, you know what? That's the right thing to do, and that's how I want people to know me. I want people to know that I am honest and that I'm not perfect, but I'm going to do everything I can to make it work. And when it doesn't work, I'm going to man up and I'm going to do what's right. And so he demonstrated that through video number 9. And video number 9 became the most popular, most awesome video out of the entire series. Everybody just loved it because he was just being really open and honest and transparent. And after video number 9 was released, all the other videos spiked in viewership because everybody wanted to go back that hadn't seen it and look at the other ones because video number 9 made them fall in love with him all over again.
It's the know, like, and trust factor.
Yep.
You know what? If you are too perfect, people can't engage. People don't believe that you're telling the truth. Mm-hmm. People don't trust you. Mm-hmm. People don't like you because you're too perfect. I mean, and they know that it's a lie.
Yep.
They know that it's a lie. I think, when we talk about people who have been in business for a long time, when we talk about serial entrepreneurs, when I talk, when I talk to you,
it's a disease, really.
But almost always, and maybe I can say always. I think I can say always. Every single serial entrepreneur, person that's been in business for a long time, when I talk to them and say, "Have you ever failed?" They have so many stories about how they failed.
Yeah.
And almost always at the end of that, and so this was a catastrophic failure, and so then I. There's always that next, and so then I.
Yeah. And
yes. And
yeah.
so here's what it looks like. If I don't ever set that goal, and I don't ever get there, meh. If I set the goal and I don't get there, now I want to know why. And there's an and then. And there's a, okay, why didn't I get there? And what could I have done differently? And sometimes there's a little bit of lamenting and beating myself up. And,
Yep.
we have to give that honesty too. But there is definitely the, I set that goal. Like, I'm sure that Jeremy, in that number 9, he not only manned up, but I'm sure that there were a few sleepless nights where he went, okay, if I had that to do over again, what would I do differently? And what would I need to know? And there's that that growing and learning that comes from setting a goal and not meeting it. And maybe we need to change the language. Maybe we need to say setting a goal and not meeting it, not setting a goal and failing. Mm-hmm. I think that language is really powerful.
Yep.
And so let's reframe it.
Yeah.
Set the goal. If you don't meet the goal, then decide what to do about that.
Well, and at the end of the day, his campaign was very successful. It achieved the results he wanted to get. But it also, because there was some challenges, because there was one that he didn't meet, presented an opportunity for him to grow and get even better rather than just being at the level that he was at. It gave him an opportunity to learn more or learn new methods or new approaches that he otherwise wouldn't necessarily have been able to have.
That whole project upped his game incredibly. Mm-hmm. And I think what we want to do with a goal is we want to choose something that will up our game, that will stretch us, that may be a little bit uncomfortable, that's actually going to accomplish something, but not that's going to shut us down. Mm-hmm. Right? So there's those of the viewers that are interested in this kind of stuff, there's Csikszentmihalyi has done something about being in flow. And he talks about can you do it, and is it overwhelming? And so there's flow. There's the boredom place where it's too easy and it's not really stretching you. And there's the overwhelm place where, holy moly, there's no way I'll ever be able to do this and I'm just going to shut down. Yep. And what we want to do is choose goals that put us in that middle place, in that flow place. Right. Where it's challenging, but we actually do have the ability to do it and it stretches us.
Right. Puts us outside of our comfort zone.
Yep.
But it's doable.
We want to choose stretch goals.
Yep.
We want to stretch ourselves. And we want to choose, and I think this is Jim Collins, we want to choose the BHAGs, the big, hairy, audacious goals, right? We want to choose those. But those might be the way down the line. Like those big, hairy, audacious goals are what we might call vision within a strategic plan. Those are at the end of the huge, big, hairy, audacious journey. What do we want to accomplish?
Right.
What will be different in the world because we were?
I know when we were talking to Jeremy, his big, hairy, audacious goal was to become a trainer.
Yeah.
But one of the strategies to get there, that was like a 5-year plan. In 5 years, I want to be a trainer training other realtors. To get there, I've got to demonstrate authority in my own market and be one of the top realtors in my own market. And I'm here now. And so how do we get for me to become one of the top trainers in the next year? So it hasn't been a year yet since we sat down with him. We sat down with him in January. It's December. We got another month, or it's almost December. We got another month to go before we're even at a year. And he's become one of the top realtors in Kamloops. He is within the top 3, and everybody above him and most of the people below him that are close to him are all big teams of realtors, not an individual realtor. So he really stands out from the crowd as being an individual realtor. But here's the exciting part. His big, hairy, audacious goal was to become a trainer. And what's he doing right now? He's being flown out to Vancouver, to Vernon, to Calgary, to Edmonton, to Toronto, to Ottawa, to teach other realtors what he's been doing because he's been so successful in Kamloops. Wow.
Yeah.
In a year,
he's
already achieving his 5-year goal because he set those goals, set the big, hairy, audacious goal, really dug in, started working towards it, and now it's going ballistic for him. It's great, right?
And I know that you have talked with him about that as he's gone along, and there is always that question of, is this step getting me closer to my goal? And if it's not, I have 2 choices. I can choose a different step, or I can admit that it isn't the right goal.
Right.
And either of those is okay. I mean, I want to be really careful that we don't lock people in. We want strategy to be something that makes you more successful, not that makes you miserable.
Right.
And strategy can be used to make yourself miserable.
Absolutely.
And so why would we want to do that? I mean, that's when people start to resist strategy. And when I start to frame strategy in this way, that it's actually life-giving, it gives you a better chance of getting closer to your goal, it's actually more fun.
It is
because
fun.
I don't have to wake up in the middle of the night and go, okay, so I have to do this and this and this and this and this, because I just have to think about, that's the direction I'm going in. How am I getting there? And that's really a different energy.
Yeah.
But there's another piece, and that is, and I was just thinking about it when you were talking about Jeremy having finished that and gotten to this top 3 goal. I really believe that we need to build in with those measurables the celebration. And one of the things that I think we do really, really poorly is celebrate. We get so on track
we being
with
humans in general.
Well, at least Western culture.
Right.
And maybe I would say businesses and nonprofits. We don't, somehow when we talk about strategy, we go, okay, I'm going to get this goal done and then that'll be a check mark, but then there will be 4 more goals to, we don't ever go, holy moly, look at what we just did. We need to celebrate that. We need to mark that. We need to say, we set that goal and we hit 80%. I actually, you know what? Celebrate if you hit 80%. Because it's more than you had when you started.
Right.
And we don't do that. And here's a challenge, I think, to your viewers. We don't do it ourselves, and my viewers. We don't do it ourselves, and we don't do it enough for each other. There is something really weird in our culture that if I say to you, Pete, I just did this, I know you will celebrate with me. But there are a lot of people who don't tell other people, because I might say, Pete, I just did this. And what do we get? Must be nice. Really?
That is, yeah.
Really?
That's ingrained in our culture.
It is ingrained in our culture. Or I might notice that you did something and say, hey, Pete, that was awesome. And you might go, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. Really? Let's celebrate with each other, because One of the things that helps if you set a goal strategically is if you can be public about it, if you can be accountable for it. By all means, set goals and keep them inside you. I mean, that's a strategy, and for some people that's really, really effective. Or write it down, or work with a coach, or whatever that is. But there's also something about accountability. There's something about shared accountability. And accountability is another word that people give a really scary rap to, because we think it means people holding us accountable and being grumpy about it, and punishment. Yeah. Exactly. Instead of, I am going to tell you when I get this right, and we're going to celebrate. Totally different accountability. But for me, that's part of successful strategy. If we don't have goals and aren't accountable and don't celebrate and aren't really clear about our direction, why would we want to do it?
Yeah.
Strategy has to be fun. There has to be a reason to do strategy. So, yeah, I guess for me, strategy is actually fun.
Awesome. Well, and you know what? Because it's fun for you,
yeah.
Maybe this is a good place for us to sort of end this and say to the audience, it can be fun for them too. It's fun for us to work with you, with clients, where we're working together. And when we work with you on strategy for Mastermind Studios, it's fun. And so what I'd like to do is invite the audience to, if you think that you're looking for a fun way to do strategic planning for your business, please reach out to Paula. I think they can get a hold of you on your website or by phone. How can people get a hold of you?
So they can find us at strategicdynamics.ca. We've just redone the website, so go check that out. We're really excited about the website. As I mentioned before, we've got a few new products that we're just rolling out around board development. There's 2 free email courses that you can sign up for right now. As well, we do lots of consulting on various organizational development and strategic development pieces. You take a look at the consulting, and then if you want to work with one of our coaches one-on-one, you can also look at the coaching on that website.
Awesome. So I encourage you, definitely check it out. Paula's been very, very effective in helping us achieve our goals in a fun and profitable way. And I know that she can do the same for you, whether you're a nonprofit or a business person, or maybe even on a personal level. You'll be able to get a lot out of it, even if you volunteer on a board or looking at volunteering on a board. So check it out, strategicdynamics.ca. And for now, that's been the Video Marketing Podcast. Thanks for checking us out. Don't forget to give us your comments below this video in the comment section down there. If this is your first time watching the Video Marketing Podcast from Mastermind Studios, don't forget to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, like us on Facebook. Every week or two, we're going to be putting out great content just like this video. And lastly, if you're interested in having your own video podcast, don't forget that the Video Podcast Center here at Mastermind Studios has been set up to help you with exactly that, with the great support and help from the folks here at Mastermind Studios. Thank you.